We're all ready to carry on into business questions. I call the leader of... Oh, forgive me. I call the opposition shadow leader.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. Will the Leader of the House give us the forthcoming business?
Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The business for the week commencing the 13th of January includes Monday the 13th of January, general debate on hospice and palliative care, followed by general debate on the impact of food and diet on obesity. The subjects for these debates were determined by the Backbench Business Committee. Tuesday the 14th of January, remaining stages of the Renters' Rights Bill. Wednesday the 15th of January, remaining stages of the Non-Domestic Ratings, Multiplier and Private Schools Bill. Thursday the 16th of January, motion to approve the draft deposit scheme for drinks and containers, England and Northern Ireland Regulations 2024, followed by debate on a motion on the performance of the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. The subject for this debate was determined by the Backbench Business Committee in unallotted time. Friday the 17th of January, private members' bills. The provisional business for the week commencing the 20th of January will include Monday the 20th of January, business to be determined by the Backbench Business Committee. Tuesday the 21st of January, remaining stages of the Armed Forces Commissioner Bill. Thank you.
Shadow Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I start by wishing you a very happy New Year, and all colleagues in the Chamber. I hope you had a zestful and restful Christmas. And I'd also like to pay tribute to those members of the House Service who have been honoured in the recent honours list. The New Year is always a time for new starts and fresh beginnings, a time when people step back, look at themselves in the mirror, pinch an inch or perhaps two, and perhaps make a few resolutions. Lay off the pies, resist the siren call of the cheese board, spend less on self-indulgences and more on things that matter, take themselves in hand and perhaps try to manage things a bit better. Madam Deputy Speaker, the government might consider adopting these New Year's resolutions for itself. After all, by any standards, its first 6 months in office have been pretty catastrophic. It's had 6 happy months blaming everyone else. Now it needs to take responsibility and lead. We've seen how the budget continues to have devastating effects both on key sectors and more widely. Just this week, the National Institute has warned that the UK economy did not grow at all in the fourth quarter. That was just only a few weeks ago. High street retailers have reported their worst sales decline since COVID, both offline and online. Business confidence is at a 4-year low. Employment continues to fall. Job vacancies, their lowest for 3 years. Only this week, we saw that long-term interest rates in the gilts market, as very well highlighted by the Shadow Chancellor in the urgent question we've just had, have risen to their highest level since 1998, 27 years ago. That's longer than the age of some members of this House, Madam Deputy Speaker, reflecting severe investor worry about Labour's spending plans and increased UK vulnerability to increases in the national debt. Now, the government can't blame that on the past, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a straight judgment on its own credibility, and it's costing this country dearly every day. The problem is not just that the government has damaged key parts of the economy with its budget decisions, it is that the long-term effect of those decisions is so counterproductive as well. CBI has calculated that the government's raid on inheritance tax will cost £1.25 billion more than it raises. Now, the Chancellor has said, and I quote, "I'm really clear, I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes," and last month she specifically ruled out an emergency budget in the spring. But the effect of these rising interest rates is to reduce fiscal headroom and make new tax rises or spending cuts very possible. Indeed, some would say almost inevitable. We must wait and see if that means emergency tax rises or an unexpected fiscal event in the spring with a detailed investigation by the OBR. But it also raises the question how the government can plan a spending review at all if it's not in control of the public finances. The damage is not going to be just to the Chancellor's own reputation, Madam Deputy Speaker. It will be to every member of every person in this country, every household in their pockets. So as we think about the new year, what resolutions should this House encourage the government to adopt? I would suggest three. First, stop taking politically driven measures that actively hurt the economy. Stop punishing the retail and hospitality sectors that give so many young people their first jobs. Stop attacking farmers and the rural economy. Stop the madness of the Employment Rights Bill that makes it harder than ever to start and build a business. We should be celebrating and rewarding drive, energy, aspiration and entrepreneurship, not undermining them. Secondly, come clean to the people of this country about the government's own uncertainty, conflict and incompetence. We've had endless announcements of new commissions and initiatives, each testimony to Labour's hopeless lack of planning before the election. We had a delayed autumn budget, and this year we'll have a spending review that, if it is not derailed itself by fiscal events, could easily last until June or July. It's all building up to a full year of stasis and stagnation since the general election. And a final resolution, Madam Deputy Speaker, might be this: show us some leadership. The Prime Minister pointed out, and rightly so, that in 2010 the incoming government inherited public finances in desperate need of repair. And he said, we cannot tax our way to prosperity or spend our way to better public services. These are refreshingly honest, cross-party recognitions of the difficulty of government. But when it comes to action, what have we seen? Dither, delay and divisive policy making. Reform of social care is a huge issue for millions of people across this country. It could lift huge burdens from the NHS, yet this week we learned that despite all Labour's promises of change, it has been kicked into the long grass. Madam Deputy Speaker, in closing, let me say this. This government was elected to own key issues and to address them, not to avoid the hard problems, parrot the usual political lines, blame other people and play nice to its friends in the unions. It needs to stop blaming others, get on and show the country it can lead.
Leader of the House, Lucy Powell.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I also wish you and the whole House a very happy New Year. And may I send all of our sympathies to the residents of Los Angeles who are being hit by wildfires. The unfolding situation is very concerning indeed. Can I also take this opportunity to congratulate a fellow Northerner, Luke Littler, on winning the World Darts Championship. He might support the wrong football team, but he's been a great role model and is really making darts a very compelling sport. It's the new year, Madam Deputy Speaker, but I'm afraid it is the same old Tories. Their decision to vote down the Children Wellbeing and Schools Bill yesterday was another huge misjudgment. They seem to have learnt nothing and are incapable of accepting they got things wrong or what it takes to rebuild trust. The victims of grooming gangs need politicians to hear their voice, to act without fear or favour, and to take all necessary steps to root out and bring justice to perpetrators and enablers, whoever they are. They do not need pathetic and blatant political bandwagon jumping. If the party opposite was really interested in the victims and justice, their leader would have met with victims, but she hasn't. When she was Children's Minister or the Secretary of State for Women, she would have acted or spoken in here about it. She didn't. If this was really about addressing the root causes and making sure our institutions, culture and laws are fit for purpose, they would have started implementing the recommendations of the J report, but they didn't. Their wrecking tactics last night showed they would rather play politics instead of supporting measures to safeguard children. And I find it quite depressing, Madam Deputy Speaker, to watch the official opposition chase the spectre of reform. These are very serious issues which require serious attention, with victims and their learnings at the centre of them. Now, he raises yet again the economy, but as ever, I'm afraid, Madam Deputy, I will take no lectures from the shadow leader. After all, he admitted himself that we inherited, and I quote, a struggling economy with anaemic growth. And our commitment to economic stability, sound public finances and meeting the fiscal rules is non-negotiable, as we've just heard from the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. We are only borrowing for investment, and we will see net debt fall. And as he knows well, the cost of debt fluctuates, often because of global markets. But I have to say, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is in stark contrast to the chaos we saw under his government when Liz Truss's kamikaze budget directly and immediately led to the gilt market crashing, needing the Bank of England to intervene to buy up government bonds. She might want us to cease and desist, but we won't cease and desist from telling the truth that they crashed the economy. And when we talk about fixing the foundations of our economy, we're talking about tackling the fundamental and huge structural problems we face. Years of low growth, very low productivity, chronically low investment, poor connectivity, a labour market with high levels of sickness and a health service on its knees, low skills and an over-reliance on record levels of immigration, which in turn puts more pressure on the housing crisis. There are no quick fixes, but it's why the decisions we've taken, like in the budget, are different. Our vision of sustainable, shared growth, and that begins with investment in health, investment in education and skills, investment in the jobs of the future, a pay rise for the lowest paid, investment in transport and connectivity, and providing decent homes for people to live in. Our approach is fundamentally different from the party's opposite, short-term, deregulatory, trickle-down economics. They can't have it both ways. We would have had cuts now if they had been in government, huge cuts to health and education. They can't have the benefits of the budget without the measures it took to raise them. Their agenda saw living standards fall for the first time in decades, stagnant growth, poor productivity, high waiting lists and sickness rates, and perhaps most telling of all, in their last year of office, net migration at nearly 1 million. We recognise it's going to take time, and we're beginning to turn the oil tanker around.
I'll go to the Chair of the Defence Select Committee, Tanmanjeet Singh Dhesi.
Thank you very much. In 1984, the global Sikh community suffered catastrophic collective trauma when the then Indian government ordered the storming of the Golden Temple complex in Amritsar, which led to devastating destruction and bloodshed, with thousands of innocent people losing their lives. 30 years later, to our shock, new documents exposed that the Thatcher government had helped their Indian counterpart by providing advice prior to that military operation. So in its pursuit for the truth and transparency, the British Sikh community duly launched a campaign for an independent inquiry to establish the extent of that involvement. Leader of the House, while previous Conservative governments have tried to brush the issue under the carpet, Sikhs expected the new Labour government to establish that promised independent inquiry. So, Leader of the House, when will that independent inquiry be initiated?
Leader of the House.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for raising this matter? I know it is of great importance to the Sikh community across the UK, and he's absolutely right to raise it here today and to continue to raise it on behalf of the Sikh community and others. We do need to get to the bottom of what happened, and I will ensure that ministers responsible are in touch with him to discuss this matter further.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Marie Goldman.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to wish you a very happy new year. I think it's still okay to say that, right? Community pharmacies are fundamental to our healthcare system, providing essential advice and services while alleviating pressure on the NHS. We simply can't do without them. Indeed, we're all now encouraged to think pharmacy first for some medical conditions. But it's hard to understand how that's possible if pharmacies are facing closure because the NHS isn't covering the cost of the medications they're dispensing. The contract between the NHS and pharmacies has simply failed to keep up with the rising costs of many medicines. The result is that many pharmacies and pharmacists are operating out of their own pocket, taking huge losses year after year. The outcome feels inevitable. We've seen 1,200 pharmacies close since 2015, nearly 500 in the past year alone. When the Company Chemists Association reports annual average shortfalls of £60,000 per pharmacy per annum, can we really be surprised? We are warned by the National Pharmacy Association of pharmacy deserts, where many rural and deprived areas risk having no immediate access at all. This can only spell a health inequality crisis felt worse by those who already struggle the most. This needs to be fixed. We must avoid even more pharmacy closures up and down the country. Pharmacies are vital not just to the communities they serve, but to the NHS as a whole. So will the Leader of the House grant government time to a debate about how our pharmacies can be better supported for long-term viability and sustainability?
The House.
Well, can I thank her for raising this important matter, and it was indeed raised, I thought, in very stark terms at Prime Minister's questions yesterday by one of her colleagues. What she describes as is happening in our community pharmacies, as well as in other parts of our broad healthcare sector, is a crisis. We are dealing with a very difficult circumstance that we've inherited after 14 years of underinvestment and industrial action and other problems in the health service. But she will know that this government is absolutely committed to extra investment. That's why the budget, which many have opposed on the benches opposite, not necessarily for herself, but many have opposed, we put record levels of investment into our national health service, and part of that is ensuring that we have services in the community, early intervention services, and our community pharmacies are absolutely central to that drive, and that's why the Secretary of State for Health will continue to support our pharmacies and help turn around this terrible situation that they face.
Sally Jameson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. A recent report stated that there was an increased risk to life at Doncaster hospitals if a fire were to occur, and there is also risk of electrical failure due to the age and condition of the infrastructure. Despite much fanfare and promise, the last government did nothing to improve the condition of Doncaster Royal Infirmary. This adds to the fact that we have one of the biggest repair backlogs in the country. Can the Leader of the House ensure that a Health Minister meets with myself and other Doncaster MPs urgently to ensure that our constituents have access to safe secondary care?
Leader of the House.
Well, she yet again raises the important issue of Doncaster Hospital in her constituency, and I know she's doing really great work to highlight the problems that they are facing there. She will be aware, I'm sure, that the new hospital programme, the capital investment programme that was so-called there under the previous government, was a work of fiction, I'm afraid, Madam Deputy Speaker. There wasn't the funds there that our hospital needed to have that capital programme, but I will ensure that she does get a meeting with a minister, because the circumstances that she describes are unacceptable.
Chair of the Backbench Committee, Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and Happy New Year to you and to everyone. In addition to the business that the Leader has announced, the Backbench Business Committee has organised debates in Westminster Hall on Tuesday, forthcoming on the 14th, railway services in the South West, and on Thursday the 16th, government support for the marine renewables industry. On the 21st of January, there will be a debate in Westminster Hall on the provision of auditory verbal therapy. And on the Thursday, the 23rd, a debate on the United Nations International Day of Education, and followed by a debate on the innovation in the field of rare retinal disease. And with your permission, Madam Deputy Speaker, on Tuesday the 28th of January, there will be a debate on road safety for young drivers. Now, I would ask the Leader that she's announced the debate on performance of the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. She will know that this was a debate that was frozen out before Christmas because the government put on a succession of statements and there was insufficient time available for that debate to take place. I hear she said that's an unallocated day, but will she arrange for it to be given protected time so that debate can actually take place in full? In addition, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have a very heavily subscribed request for a debate on Holocaust Memorial Day. Holocaust Memorial Day takes place on the 27th of January. Obviously, the Leader has not announced the dates for debates during that period of time, but it would be very helpful for all members of the House if she could indicate whether she will allow a debate either on the 27th or on one of the two Thursdays involved. This is the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, and very sadly, many of the survivors will not live to see another significant day. So I hope she'll be able to facilitate that. Now, in addition, Madam Deputy Speaker, yesterday, our allies in the United Arab Emirates announced the fact that 19 entities and individuals have been prescribed and put on their watch list for terrorist links across the world. Very sadly, 8 of those entities exist in the UK and operate freely and are not prescribed. So could we have a statement by a government minister early next week on what action the government is going to take following the actions of the United Arab Emirates to make sure that these Islamist terrorist groups who are linked to the Muslim Brotherhood are prescribed in the UK and not allowed to operate freely?
Backbench Committee, Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'll just pick up a couple of the backbench issues and again put on record my thanks to the Chairman, and I think it's great that he announces some of those debates. On the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency debate next week, which I'm pleased we have found further time for, I note that it is coming after a statutory instrument debate which would be limited to 90 minutes. So as things stand, I would be confident it would get the time. Should that situation change, I will of course look into making sure that it has sufficient time to continue on that date. On the Holocaust Memorial Day on the 27th of January, whilst I'm unable to confirm right now this date for the Honourable Gentleman, I recognise the very important issue that this debate brings to this House and how time sensitive that is, and particularly this year of all years. So if you would just bear with me, and I'm sure we can continue to have that conversation outside of the House. On the issue of the United Arab Emirates prescribing individuals, as he knows that we are close allies with that country, we work very closely with them, and I will ensure that there is a ministerial response on the matter and the subsequent action that the government is taking on those individuals.
Marsha Dickerdo.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and a very happy New Year to you too. The Listed Places of Worship grant scheme, it permits VAT to be refunded on some of our oldest, for repairs to some of our oldest church buildings as well as other religious buildings. And since its introduction under the last Labour government, the scheme has helped with the restoration of thousands of buildings across the country. That is why it is vital that this scheme does not come to an end on the 31st of March, as it would be near and impossible for many buildings and parishes to restore their spaces. So can we have a government statement on the future of the Listed Places of Worship grant scheme?
Well, I thank her for raising that important matter, which I know is of wide interest to this House. It's something that has been raised many times over the years that I've been a Member of Parliament. I understand the concern about the deadline that is imminent, and so I will ensure that either she has a conversation or discussion with a minister, or a minister comes to this House and explains the future of that policy to everybody else.
Wendy Morton.
Madam Deputy Speaker, this week we're seeing temperatures plummet across the country. I know in the West Midlands we're expecting -6 this evening. So for those constituents who have been forced to apply for pension credit in the hope that they may be eligible for a winter fuel payment, I wonder if the Right Honourable Lady could reassure the House that they will all receive these payments in good time, because they are faced with that awful decision of how do they afford heating their homes.
Well, I recognise the issue that she raises, and of course temperatures are very, very cold at the moment right across the country. She will know that in addition to the support that's there for pensioners, whether that's the increased state pension this year, the record increase of applications we've had for pension credit, and that is being processed at pace. In addition to the £150 warm home discount, the extra money that's being distributed by councils to many pensioners, in some cases £200 and above, people will also be eligible for the cold weather payments over the course of this cold period. So she can be assured that pensioners who are eligible in this cold weather are getting the support that they need.
Barry Gardiner.
Deputy Speaker, the government has said that by June it intends to ratify the agreement on biodiversity beyond national jurisdictions, more commonly known as the Global Oceans Treaty. It has also said, quite correctly and highly unusually, that before it does so, it intends to implement, take steps to put in place the measures to implement the agreement. This will require primary legislation, and I wonder if the Leader of the House can tell us when such legislation may be brought forward and what form it might take.
Thank him for that question. I am well aware of this issue and the legislative time it would be required. The government is completely committed to ratifying the BBNJ agreement, and work is already underway to implement provisions in the agreement before we can ratify it. He will be aware that we have a very heavy legislative agenda, one of the most ambitious of any incoming government, and the legislation about this treaty will come forward in due course.
Clive Jones.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Young cancer patients are subject to a 3-month qualifying period before they can even apply for disability living allowance or personal independence payments, on top of a 20-week delay for processing of their disability benefits. Children have often died before the benefits have been awarded, and due to bureaucratic inertia by Department of Work and Pensions. Hughes Law, proposed by Kerry and Francis Benai-Davis, would seek to remove the 3-month qualifying period for DLA and calls for day one financial support. Will the Leader of the House provide government time for a debate on the merits of Hughes Law?
Towards the microphone will help elevate the gentleman's voice. Leader of the House.
Well, can I thank him for raising that and the plight of the young people who have cancer and face some really difficult challenges in their life. And he raises an important issue about the timely awarding of disability living allowance and other benefits to those, as he's described as Hughes Law. I will ensure that he gets a full ministerial reply about such matters, and if that's not sufficient, then I'll ensure that we make some time for it.
Chris Bloore.
Deputy Speaker. Residents living in Brockhill and Brockhill development in my constituency of Redditch have been fighting developers for nearly 2 decades to have roads adopted for fit-for-purpose estate management and for land parcels to be adopted. Would the Leader of the House agree to government time to discuss how we can hold developers to account on their promises during the planning process so that residents don't have to spend 20 years fighting for what they've paid for?
Yeah. Well, he's absolutely right to raise these issues, and that's why this government is bringing forward a major piece of legislation, the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, that will ensure that developers are playing their role in ensuring local services, local infrastructure that is needed to sit alongside these kind of developments that he describes.
Dame Harriett Baldwin.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I wonder if the Leader of the House is planning to set aside some government time for us to discuss the enormous changes to local government that were announced in a statement just before Christmas. It forced a lot of councils to come up with plans at very, very short notice. There has been very limited opportunity for any kind of democratic engagement from our constituents. And it seems to me that we ought to, at least in this chamber, spend some time debating some of the implications of cancelling a series of, potentially cancelling a series of local elections. And I wondered if she would spare that time.
Well, I think she raises a really important point. We have set out in a white paper, as was described in the statement, some really major reforms around delivering on that devolution agenda, putting power back into communities that we said we would do. There have been some knock-on consequences of that. I would like to assure her that we will only consider postponing elections where this would help deliver reorganisation and devolution in the most ambitious time frame possible. But I think she makes a very good case for perhaps a general debate to discuss some of these issues more broadly. I'm sure it will be well attended.
Bambos, Charalambous.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. 2025 is Jubilee year, which is a motivation for many Christian organisations and others to campaign to cancel the debts of global south countries and to tackle the root causes of endless debt crisis. With over 3.3 billion people living in countries where more is spent on servicing debt than on health and education combined, can we have a debate in government time on debt relief for low-income and debt-distressed countries?
Here, well said.
Well, the Jubilee year 2025 is a really great campaign, and I'm sure he might want to raise these issues with the Foreign Secretary or the Foreign Office team in their questions next week. But I think this would make an excellent debate for the Backbench Business Committee. I know that's something they have granted debates on in the past, and actually while we're at it, I would encourage colleagues to apply to the Backbench Business Committee for debates.
Anderson.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. In Fylde, it feels like our Greenbelt is under attack from all directions and in an uncoordinated way, with Morgan and Morecambe wind farm cabling corridor and substations coming in at St Anne's on the coast and then cabling all the way through Fylde to Penwitham, with solar farm applications left, right and centre, and our housing target having just been doubled and pretty much nowhere to put it other than the Greenbelt. Could I ask for a debate in government time where we can look at the different government departments that are placing demands on the Greenbelt, on our countryside, so that we can discuss the impact that is going to have, not just on the farmlands and countryside that will be lost, but the impact on things such as flooding, congestion and other dangers that it would present, to make sure we preserve our countryside and the government attacks it in a coordinated way.
Well, he will be aware that the Greenbelt is protected, remains protected. What this government has plans to unlock is what we describe as grey belt, which is not particularly good quality sort of green belt that he describes. We want brownfield first in our planning decisions as well. But what he does raise is the issue of all of these different aspects coming together, from energy supply to infrastructure, transport and others. And that's why our planning and infrastructure bill, which is will be coming before this House very soon, will look at all of these issues in the round, and I'm sure he will take part in those debates.
Joanna Baxter.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The 31st of January marks the 95th anniversary of the Glen cinema disaster. This was one of the UK's worst cinema disasters that took place in my constituency of Paisley in Renfrewshire South. 71 children, the youngest of which was only 4, lost their lives in a crowd crash caused by a smoking canister of nitrate film. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that the legacy of the lives of people who are lost lies in the fire and building safety regulations that exist in the UK? And the next time she is in the cinema and sees an emergency door lit, will she pause to remember the children of the Glen Cinema?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure the whole House would want to take a moment, 95 years on, to remember all of those who were tragically killed in the Glen Cinema tragedy, and she makes that reminder very, very well on behalf of her constituents. She will be aware that things have moved on, and in fact in recent years we have learnt those lessons and made sure that our public places are safe. And going through the other place at the moment is actually Martin's Law, which, although is focused on terrorism, would also support action against fire and other hazards in our public spaces.
Brendan O'Hara.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last week, while serving as a medic in Ukraine, my constituent Jordan McLachlan from Ardnamurchan was killed. Jordan volunteered to go to Ukraine at the start of the war, and his family have said that by serving on the front line, Jordan always felt he was making a difference. Will the Leader of the House join me not just in sending our deepest condolences to Jordan's heartbroken family and friends, but in saying that we in this House also believe that Jordan, in his work as a Ukrainian army medic, did make a difference? And will she agree with me that it is now incumbent on all of us who believe in democracy and the rule of law to ensure that Jordan's memory is kept alive by ensuring that aggressors like Putin will not win?
Well, can I also express our deepest condolences to Jordan's family and friends, and I know that consular officials are in touch and supporting his family. And whilst I wouldn't want to encourage people to go to Ukraine in that way, I think what I would absolutely share is this government's commitment to making sure that Ukraine wins in this illegal war against Putin's aggression, and we will do whatever it takes to support Ukrainians in that endeavour.
Joe White.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I've tabled an early day motion calling for disclosure and barring service checks for all members of both houses. This would make us all feel safer in the corridors of power, but more importantly, give the institutions we visit, such as care homes and schools, much greater confidence in who they are letting in through their doors. My submission to the Modernisation Committee also makes this proposal. Would the Leader of the House support such a proposal?
Well, can I thank her for raising that and also for writing to me and to the Modernisation Committee about it. I absolutely understand her motivation to make sure that the House of Commons and indeed the wider Parliament is a safe place for people to work, and that our constituent and others can feel safe in their interactions with us, which is why we have developed over recent years more robust systems around that, and we are looking further at these issues. But I do say gently to the honourable member that I think we do need to strike a balance here to ensure that we can actually represent our constituents freely and openly as well.
John Lamont.
Thank you very much. Scottish Labour announced this week that they will abstain to allow the SNP government's budget to pass through the Scottish Parliament. This is now typical of Scottish Labour, sitting on the fence and not standing up to the SNP in Scotland. Does the Leader of the House agree there should be a statement on the UK government's priorities for Scotland, considering her party promised change but are now endorsing the same old SNP tactics?
Well, I would not agree with his characterisation there. The Scottish Labour and the Labour Party have done more than most to stand up to the failures of the Scottish Government, of which there are many, and it's why we have returned a record number of Labour MPs in Scotland who won seats directly from the Scottish National Party as well. The Scottish National Party and the government there now have a huge amount of extra money thanks to this government's budget. They've got the powers to get that to the front line, and we want to see the lives of people in Scotland improve, but we absolutely believe that that will be done better when people vote for Scottish Labour in the future.
Emma Lewis.
Very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. My right honourable friend will know that through the pandemic, the Conservative Government excluded nearly 4 million self-employed and other workers from financial support. Lives were lost and livelihoods ruined. Many remain struggling. Please can she make time for a debate so we can yet again look to right the wrongs of the previous government?
Well, she makes a very good point about raising those that were excluded and those who were left in great difficulty as a result of the pandemic, which was obviously a huge sort of shock to the economy at the time. We have got Treasury questions coming up in a couple of weeks, and she may want to raise that issue then.
Max Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The member for West Worcestershire mentioned the subject of devolution, and in Gloucestershire we stand
on the cusp of a democratic outrage. The County Council leadership has suggested that districts are backing it in cancelling this year's elections and backing a single unitary authority for the whole of Gloucestershire. This is not the case, having spoken to other districts, and I know members on the Labour benches from Gloucestershire share my concerns. So I would add my weight to the call made by the member for West Worcestershire that if county councils persist in this kind of democratic outrage, that we must have time in this House to debate it, and I hope the leader would agree with me.
Yeah. Well, I hear what he says, and just to reiterate what I said earlier, that the Minister for Local Government has set out some very clear criteria that must be met in relation to any request for postponing of elections, and one of the things that he will be looking for is that there is support across the area for that decision. But I certainly will listen to requests for a broader debate on this issue.
Lee Pitcher.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Yeah.
A few years ago, my cousin John took his own life. And it's something that, as a family, I can absolutely say here and now you will never, ever get over. And there are Johns out there today, many Johns contemplating their future. And January is a particularly tough month for many people. Will the Leader of the House join me in raising awareness about mental health, in making sure that people are aware that actually it's an absolute strength of character to speak up and speak out and talk about your feelings, and recognise the amazing organisations that are out there that welcome people into their doors every day to have that safe space and that environment, like the Jackson Hope Foundation in my constituency of Doncaster East in the Isle of Axholme.
Well, absolutely. I'm really sorry to hear of the death of his cousin John from mental health issues, and he's absolutely right to raise these, especially at this time of year when we have dark nights, we have cold weather, it's after Christmas, and many people feel that the start of the new year is not as optimistic as some of the rest of us, and he's absolutely right that speaking up and sharing and being open about these things is one of the best ways that we can tackle the blight of mental health.
Robin Moore.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. A constituent of mine, Maria Cully, has long been campaigning for a comprehensive regulation framework for nannies, such as mandatory background checks, standardised training, ongoing professional development and other standards to be included, all to ensure that every nanny in the UK is held to a high standard whilst protecting families with the security of knowing that their children are safe and in capable hands. I've been asking for a meeting with the Children and Families Minister for some time now, and I wonder if the Leader of the House could just push that meeting along so that I and my constituent Maria can meet with the Minister of State to discuss this campaign.
Well, he raises a really important issue about making sure that all of those who are looking after our children are operating to the highest standards, safely and with strong levels of accountability. I would gently say to the honourable gentleman that that's often not the message that comes from his front bench about these sorts of issues, and that we are often asked to do the opposite when it comes to the early years sector. But our Children Wellbeing Bill that was passed second reading yesterday will look at some of these issues, but I will certainly ask for a minister to give him a sort of full response about the nanny sector as well.
Dame Siobhan McDonough.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This week, we've spent a lot of time talking about Elon Musk and his concern about violence and sexual abuse against women. I'm aware of a case ongoing right now where a woman continues to be stalked by a man who has already been convicted of stalking her and who has set up an X account in her name and is posting pornography. However, Elon Musk's company refuses to provide the IP account address in order to improve the level of sanction against the man. Would the leader find the time for a debate to discuss what Mr Musk and his company can do to ensure that those guilty of harming women are properly prosecuted?
Well, she raises a very concerning case, and it's not an isolated one. And that's why this government is taking real steps when it comes to stalking, with our stalking prevention orders being strengthened as well. She will know we've got a debate this afternoon on ending violence against women and girls. She raises a particular issue about the responsibility of social media companies, and unfortunately some of these issues were not in the end included in the Online Safety Act by the previous government, which it watered that act down at the last minute. But I will ensure that she gets a proper reply from the Minister about what powers the government and the police do have to take action in this case, and we will look at where that needs to be strengthened further.
Now, I need you to all work with me. If your questions are fast and the answers just as faster, I will be able to get everybody in, otherwise not everyone's going to be able to get in. Ellie Chowns.
Thank you. Madam Deputy Speaker, 2 days before Christmas, the government pulled the plug on the Community Ownership Fund. This is a devastating blow to organisations, charities, community groups across the country, such as Muchmarkle Community Shop, Pencombe Parish Council, who wanted to buy the local pub, and of course the local disability charity Echo, all in my constituency, all with fantastic projects, now with no prospect of government funding. Will the Leader of the House ask the Secretary of State to come to the House to answer questions from ministers as to why they've pulled the rug out from under projects like this, and how they will support community projects to serve their communities? Thank you.
Well, can I thank her for raising that issue? And I know it is an issue of concern to other members across this House. She's right, we have taken the very difficult decision due to the challenging economic situation and inheritance that we found by the previous government to end this particular fund. But we do remain committed to the community sector and community empowerment, and we will deliver on our manifesto commitment to replace the community right to bid with a strengthened right to buy assets of community value, and I will ensure that further updates are given to this House in due course.
Deputy Speaker, Deeplish Community Centre in Rochdale has just celebrated 35 years of providing preschool clubs, holiday play groups and elderly lunch clubs, as well as jobs and training for people in the heart of Rochdale. The key thing is that it proudly retains its Sure Start status, as it did under the last Labour government, and it's a family hub which helped rebuild the nearby Deeplish Primary School, who I had the pleasure of welcoming to Westminster last year. Will the Commons Leader join me in congratulating Sahel Ahmed and all those who built this fantastic community device over the last few years?
Well, absolutely, I will join him in congratulating all those involved in the Deeplish Community Centre in his constituency and celebrating their 35th, I think, birthday as well. As a fellow Greater Manchester MP, we are both well aware of the really good work that the Mayor Andy Burnham has been doing there on ensuring that we've got the early years provision, and we've maintained the Sure Start model to some degree to ensure that everybody gets the very best start in life.
Andrew Rosendale.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm sure the Leader of the House will be celebrating with the people of the Falkland Islands tomorrow as they gather for a public holiday to commemorate Margaret Thatcher Day. The Prime Minister, who went there 42 years ago tomorrow, on the 10th of January, following the liberation of the islands. Yeah. And self-determination, of course, is what she fought for the Falkland Islanders. So will she ensure the government makes an urgent statement confirming the same principle of self-determination to all British citizens of all British territories, including the British Indian Ocean Territory, and the right of self-determination of the Chagos Islanders?
Well, look, I perhaps won't celebrate Margaret Thatcher Day in quite the way that he wants me to, but I will be absolutely, on behalf of the government, make clear our commitment to the Falkland Islands. And, you know, I remember very well the sort of very passionate defence that the Prime Minister made about that, and his involvement, his family's involvement in the Falklands War at this dispatch box in recent weeks. He raises the issue of Chagos. He will be aware that it was his own government that began those negotiations. I think actually 11 rounds of negotiations about the future of that airbase there. under his government's watch. So it was something that we very much inherited, was in train at the time.
Christine Sullivan.
Deputy Speaker. In my constituency of Bathgate and Linlithgow, the Museum of Scottish Railways at the site of the Bo'ness and Kinneil Railway and operated by the Scottish Railway Preservation Society is Scotland's largest railway museum, and it's playing a key part of the celebrations marking 200 years of modern railways, recognising its importance in preserving heritage and attracting over 60,000 visitors every year. Can the Leader of the House grant time for a debate on supporting and celebrating heritage railways?
Well, actually, heritage railways like that of Bowness and Kinneil Railway do get mentioned in these sessions very often, and I will absolutely join her in thanking them for the brilliant work that they do and the volunteers that they rely on to make sure that these heritage railways, which are so valued, continue to flourish.
Matt Vickers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Small retailers, restaurants and pubs add huge vibrancy, colour and character to the Great British High Street, but the budget posed an existential crisis for many of them, with the increases to national insurance and the slashing of small business rates. Would my right honourable friend grant a debate on how we can better protect the future of the Great British High Street and the many jobs that it provides?
Well, I think as the Member of Parliament with the highest number of pubs in their constituency, I will strongly echo his support of the hospitality sector and the vital role that they play in keeping our high streets and town centres and city centres vibrant, all the employment they bring, all the joy and everything else. It's been a tough few years for the hospitality sector. We all recognise that. We had to take some difficult decisions in the budget to make sure that our health service wasn't going to be facing cuts, that our education service wasn't going to be making cuts, and I think in the long run our hospitality sector will benefit from all the investment that we're putting in to make sure they've got a healthy and highly skilled workforce.
Harling.
Madam Deputy Speaker, just before Christmas I was fortunate to attend the latest passing out parade for graduates of the fire break scheme at Stanground Fire Station in my constituency of North West Cambridgeshire. This is an intensive 5-day intervention programme that provides a positive alternative learning environment, and it's aimed at young people aged 10 to 18 who are struggling with the mainstream education environment. Participants leave with certificates in CPR, basic life support and all sorts. Will the Leader of the House join me in congratulating the work of Paul Clark, Children and Young People Lead, and the Community Fire Safety Group at Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service, and consider a debate on how supporting interventions like this can help young people get back on the right track by re-engaging and thriving in their education?
Well, I will certainly join him in congratulating the Community Fire Safety Group at Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Service. The alternative provision that he highlights is absolutely crucial in providing children who would otherwise be out of school or maybe taken out of school or have nowhere else to go to get the support that they need so they can flourish in life.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Like the Honourable Member for North Herefordshire, I share the concerns about the closure of the Community Ownership Fund. An East Neuk community in my constituency made the 50-page application with the support of the Development Trust Association Scotland and were told to wait till after the budget. I heard a response to the Honourable Member, but can we have a debate in government time about this so that community assets in Scotland as well as other parts of the UK don't suffer?
Well, I hear that there are more than one member, and I know there's been others this week who are interested in the future of the community ownership fund. As I said to the honourable member earlier, this government is committed to the principles of community ownership and to making that easier for communities to take ownership of assets. I hear their calls. There are oral questions to the department coming up next week, and if their answers are not satisfactorily resolved, I will certainly look at a debate.
Abdusam Mohammed.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Many of my constituents in Sheffield Central are rightly concerned about animal welfare, and I join them in wanting to see more action in this area, whether that's an end to trail hunting, the phasing out of animal testing, or abolishing the use of snare traps. I welcome the Government's pledge to introduce a range of measures in support of animal welfare. Will the Leader of the House give some indication on the likely timescales for reform in this area?
Well, can I thank her for raising these issues? She will be aware that in our manifesto we have a number of commitments to animal welfare issues, some of which will require legislation, others won't. We do have a very packed legislative programme currently for this session, but we are committed to bringing forward legislation in this space where it's necessary and to improve animal welfare standards in this country.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Tara and Keith in my Taunton Welling constituency have written to me about the appalling 1-hour delays of the first buses, 22 bus service. Lessons are being missed, and really seriously, one gentleman in my constituency has missed his operation, a serious operation, because of the appalling service. Will the Leader of the House arrange time to debate public transport in Somerset, including the need to reopen Wellington Station on the same route as the 22 bus service?
Well, I'm sorry to hear of the delays that Tara and Keith and his constituency have suffered from poor bus services in his area. I think we can all recognise, well, obviously in Greater Manchester we've suddenly got great buses, but apart from us, I think other people can absolutely recognise, particularly in our rural communities. That's why we've brought forward the bus service reform bill currently in the House of Lords, and we're putting in extra investment into our buses so that local communities like his can have a reliable and affordable bus service.
Mary Glidden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The number of survivors of historical abuse at Medhamsley Detention Centre is decreasing. Victims are seeking justice for the serious and widespread abuse that took place between 1961 and 1987. Will the Leader of the House please help me secure a meeting with the Home Secretary to discuss how finally the survivors, as well as the families of those who are no longer with us, can achieve full justice?
I absolutely will help her secure a meeting with either the Home Secretary or the relevant Minister to discuss this historical abuse case.
Joshua Reynolds.
Deputy Speaker, 160,000 people live in residential park homes in England. However, when they come to sell their property, they're required to pay 10% of their sale price to the site owner. And although local authorities are responsible for the site licence, they often don't have the specific knowledge, made worse by the fact that they don't have to have a named park home officer. So will the Leader of the House make time for debate on this and how we give park home owners more rights over their properties and fix some of these issues?
Well, something I actually I'm not aware of. I haven't come across a park home in my own constituency, but it raises a really important point, and I think this would make an extremely good application for an adjournment debate. But in the meantime, I will ensure he gets a full ministerial response about park homes.
Chris Finns.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I wish you a happy new year. Over the Christmas recess, I was lucky enough to visit South East Harlow Sports and Youth Association, a fantastic grassroots youth and sport association who support young people in my community of Harlow to get access to sport and really thrive. Can I ask that we have a debate in government time about how we can support grassroots youth organisations like this one to make sure that they survive and thrive and support young people in our communities?
Well, I'll join him in congratulating South East Harlow Youth and Sports Association for the great work that they do. He's absolutely right to raise the vital role of grassroots sport facilities, and that's why this government has set aside budgets for that to continue and to flourish. He might want to raise it with the Secretary of State in questions next week.
Van Merle.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, ADHD services in Oxfordshire are in crisis. There are no adult specialised commission services available, and waiting lists have been closed. Those who are lucky enough to have a diagnosis and treatment can't get medication because of medication shortages. In one case, in my constituency, a constituent was unable to continue their care, having turned 18, being kicked out of the paediatric services. Will the Leader of the House make time to discuss ADHD services nationwide in this House?
For raising ADH services and the broader issues of SEN provision in this country as well, which gets raised in this session and in many other ways on the floor of the House very regularly. He will know that we are just not getting the outcomes that we need, and families and children are not getting the support that they need in this area, even though costs go up and up. We have set aside £1 billion extra in this budget to support special educational need, but he's absolutely right that we do need to look at these services and make sure that they are fit for purpose and we're getting the outcomes and support that we need.
Laura Kirk-Smith.
With Aylesbury Town Council to convene some of the businesses that are so central to our community. They raised their concerns about antisocial behaviour, and the data backs them up. In the last year, more than 750 incidents were recorded in the constituency. Does the Leader of the House agree that we must tackle this challenge in our town centres, and not just tackle the challenge but promote positive, respectful behaviour? And will she make space for a debate on this issue?
The antisocial behaviour chips away at community sense of confidence and pride and makes people feel at risk in their own communities. Our new respect orders will begin to tackle this issue, and we will have a crime and policing bill coming forward to this House very shortly where we can discuss this further.
Shannon.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I just again thank the Leader of the House for all the answers to the questions. In Bangladesh in 2024, over 400 attacks were carried out in places belonging to Hindus and other religious minorities, including some 25 temples. These attacks have impacted on some 20,000 people across 47 districts, resulting in the deaths of at least 60 Hindus, alongside reports of rape and mob lynchings, including the very brutal killing of an 18-year-old in the presence of police and military clergymen. Personnel. Furthermore, Chinmoy Krishna Das, a Hindu clergyman, was arbitrarily arrested and raising issues about the treatment of religious minorities and their leaders in Bangladesh. So will the Leader of the House urge the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office to raise these alarming issues, violations of freedom of religion belief, with the Bangladeshi government? Thank you so much.
Well, as ever, he raises an important matter, and we have been very clear in our discussions with the interim government in Bangladesh about the importance of political consensus and stability and the need for national reconciliation in the country.
We have 20 members left, all on the same side. So if you all work together, you'll all get in. So it's up to you now. Mark Stewart.
Speaker, and Happy New Year. I absolutely welcome the government's announcement that West Yorkshire, and the Humber even, is getting £123 million to repair potholes. Since the announcement, many of my constituents in Leeds, South West and Morley have been in touch with me about key roads in the constituency, Cross Peel Street, Tingley Roundabout, Asquith Avenue, that I've mentioned 3 times in this House already. Will the Leader of the House grant an urgent debate on the need to help these local authorities spend this money quickly so that all of our residents feel the benefit?
Yeah. Well, it's becoming a very famous avenue in his constituency in Parliament, but he's absolutely right. Fixing potholes is a priority for this government. That's why we have announced record levels of investment in this, and that's equivalent to an extra £7 million potholes just this year that could be filled if councils spend that money quickly and well.
Stephen Sander.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. 1 year and 1 day ago, the Prime Minister visited my constituency to see the flood damage. Over the past weeks, properties in my constituency have once again been ruined by flooding. When the Prime Minister came a year ago, he met Jacob. Jacob spent the last year fixing up his house. It was fixed last month, and now it's been ruined again. Can the Leader assure me that this government will do everything they can to protect my community, including some of the £2.4 billion of flood defence money?
Well, I'm really sorry to hear that Jacob has yet again been affected by flooding, and what he describes, as he will be aware, is that flooding incidents are now becoming more extreme and occurring more often. What we inherited in terms of flood defences was pretty shocking, but we are turning that around, and we've got the Flood Resilience Task Force and the extra money going in, but I will ensure that this House, as it has been this week, is kept updated with our plans around flooding.
Karen Moon.
Madam Deputy Speaker, rugby union is the national sport of Cornwall and is integral to many of our local communities. And having spoken to several rugby clubs across and associated with Cornwall over recent months, including Camborne Rugby Club and Redruth Rugby Club, that's celebrating its 150th anniversary, There is deep and widespread unease at the current governance of English rugby, with several grassroots community rugby clubs reportedly on the financial brink. Now, this is not an issue restricted to Cornwall, and clubs all over the country are reporting the same issues. So will the leader grant government time to debate this important issue?
Well, as ever, he's raising really important issues for his constituents in Cornwall, and I'm sorry to hear about what's happening with rugby in his constituency. He might want to raise this next week at DCMS questions, but if he doesn't get a good reply, I will make sure that the Minister gets back to him.
Danny Beales.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. A recent London Council's report highlighted major issues in the capital with special educational needs provision, workforce capacity and inclusion. In light of this, I welcome the new government's significant financial commitment for SEND. However, this year, Conservative Hillingdon Council are proposing a £7 million cut to local schools in my constituency due to their own failure to manage the local SEND system. This will devastate SEND inclusion in local mainstream schools. Can we get a debate in the House to discuss SEND provision, and will she relay my concerns to the department concerned?
I absolutely will relay his concerns about what Hillingdon Council is proposing around a special educational need and support for schools. This government has allocated an extra £1 billion for special educational need. We've also allocated significantly extra money for local councils as well. So there really is no excuse for Hillingdon Council to behave in this way.
Dave Robertson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Friary School is a secondary school in my constituency, and earlier this school year held a school-wide referendum, including parents and the wider community, on lowering the voting age to 16. I'm very proud that this will also be the topic for the Lichfield School Speaking Competition, again, thanks to the sponsorship of Arthur Price and the Rotary Club of St Chad. Will the Leader of the House join me in commending the organiser of that referendum, Emma Mackenzie, the head girl at the school, and agree that it's high time that we should follow Emma's lead and have a debate on this topic in this place?
Well, can I congratulate Emma and all of those who are involved in their school around highlighting these issues. As he is aware, votes at 16 is a government manifesto commitment. We will be bringing forward legislation to make that a reality when parliamentary time allows. It's unlikely to be this session, but a future session, and I'm sure that he will want to go back and report that to his school.
Louise Jones.
Madam Deputy Speaker. With the recent poor weather, too many of my constituents in North East Derbyshire have had sleepless nights watching river gauges, fearing a repeat of last year's flooding. Could the Leader assure me that we're doing everything we can to combat flooding and update me on our progress?
I thank her for raising these issues, and flooding is affecting many more constituencies and communities, and more often as we see the effects of climate change on this country. We do have a government-wide approach to tackling climate change, but also taking the steps on flood resilience, flood support, and making sure that our communities have it. But I will ensure that the House is kept up to date as these things develop.
Gregor Poynton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Wherever I go in the Livingston constituency, local residents raise with me the poor standard of local bus service, with one resident in Livingston Village telling me that to get to hospital appointments, the elderly and people with children are being forced to walk long ways or pay for taxis, and the same is true at Addenbrave, have lost their bus, or Addywell and Stonyburn or Longridge, who have to take multiple buses to get to the hospital. Unfortunately, this is not just unique to my constituency, with statistics showing local bus services in Scotland have collapsed by 44% since the SNP took charge. Will the Leader agree to debate on the vital importance of local bus services to our constituents, and perhaps the SNP and Scottish Government can learn something from the UK Government around protecting our bus services?
Well, I absolutely will join him in saying how important local bus services are, and that's why this government is taking steps to ensure that there are better bus services here in England. The Scottish Government will now receive almost £48 billion in the next financial year, and they really should be using that to support local services like the buses in his constituency.
Maggie Shanker.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Government's commitment to crack down on waste incinerators. In my own constituency of Derby South, I've campaigned against a plant now for 16 years. The Simpson Waste Treatment Centre failed initial testing in 2017 and has never ever been put into operational use. But with the project continuing, over £150 million has absolutely been wasted, and it's clear that this incinerator needs to be stopped. Where there's legitimate local and environmental and financial concerns, like there are in Simpson, we need to take those tough decisions. So will my right honourable friend allow time for a debate on the management of incinerator projects?
Can I thank him for that question? I think it's his first business question, so welcome in here to these sessions. This government will only back new waste incinerator projects that meet strict new conditions. It does get raised with me a lot, actually, in these sessions, so I would perhaps encourage him to work across the floor of the House, where many other members have raised it too, and get a backbench business debate on waste incinerators.
Chris Webb.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We're seeing alarming increases in heavily pregnant women and families with complex medical needs being shipped in, sometimes in the middle of the night, to our asylum hotel. Our area's been abandoned, or was abandoned, by the previous government. We've got one of the worst hospitals in the country, yet the previous government put this asylum hotel in one of our most deprived wards. Can we have a debate in government time about what support we can give to our NHS workers who are working through this appalling legacy?
Well, I'm sorry to hear of the situation in his constituency. He will know we inherited an asylum system that was broken under exceptional strain. We are committed to end the use of asylum hotels, but that will obviously take time as we work through tackling the small boats, which we are doing. We have also put in record levels of funding into the National Health Service, but he's absolutely right to raise the issue that if we don't get on top of the illegal and net migration figures that are incredibly high, we'll continue to put pressure on our National Health Service.
Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Prostate cancer costs the NHS around £93 million a year, with over a third of these costs avoidable through early diagnosis. However, it remains the only major cancer in the UK without a national screening programme. I do understand requesting screening can be a real obstacle to some men, so I give a heartfelt thanks to my constituent Steve, who is currently fighting prostate cancer and who opened up to me to discuss this importance of helping other men get diagnosis early. Would the Leader of the House allocate time for a debate on a targeted screening programme urgently needed to address the gap and improve outcomes for vulnerable groups?
Absolutely, and what an important issue she raises. She may be aware that the UK National Screening Committee is currently undertaking an evidence-led review into prostate cancer screening, and it's due to be completed soon, and I will ensure that she and this House is updated as soon as it is.
Claire Hughes.
Madam Deputy Speaker, parents in my constituency are deeply worried about the prevalence of ketamine in our communities. Staff at our local hospital tell me that an increasing number of young people are presenting with serious harm caused by the drug, including life-lasting bladder damage. Madam Deputy Speaker, young people, use of ketamine by young people in the UK is estimated to have tripled since 2016. So I was really pleased to read this week that the Policing Minister sought advice on upgrading ketamine from a Category C to a Category B drug. Will the Leader of the House join me in condemning criminals who peddle drugs to children, such as ketamine, and grant a debate on the important issue of tackling drug use among young people?
Absolutely, and I think many of us see the real dangerous impact of the rise in use of ketamine across our constituents and with young people. She has raised and she's mentioned the action that's been taken by government ministers, and we will do whatever it takes to clamp down on the growth of use of ketamine.
Luke Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Will the Leader of the House join me in paying tribute to Chris Connor, who sadly died over the Christmas break? Chris was a long-standing member of the Labour Party, former borough and county councillor and honorary alderman of Basingstoke. Chris will be remembered not only for his service to our community, but for his kindness, his passion and his steadfast belief in fairness and justice. My thoughts are with his wife Angela, his family, friends and all who knew him. Would the Leader of the House consider holding a debate to enable honourable members across this House to pay tribute to dedicated public servants like Chris?
Well, what a beautiful tribute to Chris and all the work that he did, and I'm sure that his family and friends will have watched his words with great comfort today. And councillors up and down this country do an enormous, valuable job for our country and our communities, and I'm sure that a debate on such a matter would be very well attended.
Patricia Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Will my honourable friend join me in congratulating the young women across the country who took part in the Cyber First Girls competition, and especially the winners in the Scotland section, Charlotte, Jess, Sanya and Aoife of Hindland Secondary School in my Glasgow West constituency? And does she agree with me that it is increasingly important that girls are encouraged to pursue an interest and also perhaps a career in cybersecurity?
Here,
here, here.
Absolutely, and what a fantastic achievement for Hindland Secondary School in her constituency, and I will absolutely join her in saying that young girls absolutely should go into computing, into cyber security, and let's not forget that it was Ada Lovelace who wrote the world's first computer programme.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I have a large... Excuse me, Madam Deputy Speaker, clear my throat. I have a large Sikh population in my constituency of Wolverhampton West, and I've received many letters from constituents expressing concern about transnational repression and political interference by the Indian government, creating risks of safety and security for Sikhs not only travelling to India, but when they are in this country as well. And they referred to the mysterious sudden death of Avatar Singh Kanda in Birmingham in June 2023, days before the assassination of the Sikh leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Canada. Will the Leader of the House please ensure that our UK government ministers make representations to their counterparts in India to respect and comply with the rule of law and UK's sovereignty for the safety and security of Sikhs in this country?
Well, I know that what he raises will be really welcomed by the Sikh community across the UK. Very important issues around transnational aggression, and I will certainly make sure that the Minister has heard what he's said today and that the House is updated in due course.
Alice MacDonald.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Around 153,000 people live with Parkinson's in the UK, including many of my constituents who have told me about the difficulties they face in accessing treatment. I welcome the plan set out by the Health Secretary on health reforms and investment, but can we have a specific debate on the challenges facing those with Parkinson's in the UK?
Well, I will absolutely join her in saying that we want a society where every person with a disease like Parkinson's receives the high quality care that they need and that they can afford. That's why we're taking steps to reform and to invest in our social care sector. It is going to take some time. It's not something that's easy to do, but I will ensure that this House is updated at every stage.
Tony Reid.
Deputy Speaker, I recently met with 2 special educational needs teachers in my constituency in East Kilbride. Along with them and thousands of teachers across Scotland, they are owed millions of pounds in overpaid taxes. Unfortunately, the HMRC and the 16 local authorities affected are at gridlock. Would she consider granting time so that we can help overcome this intolerable situation for valuable public sector workers?
Yeah.
Well, absolutely, and this is the right place to raise such an issue with me, so I will ensure that ministers look into this matter for her and get back to her with a full response.
Scott Arthur. Oh my goodness. Well, Andy McNay.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And, Happy New Year to you and to the Leader of the House. And with New Year comes New Year's Honours List. And so would the Leader join me in congratulating my friend and constituent Barry Hyde on being awarded the British Empire Medal for his exceptional voluntary contribution to our community in Rosendale and Darwin. But Barry and thousands of volunteers like him at the heart of our community, would she agree also to a general debate on the value of the voluntary sector to our society?
Yeah. Well, I'll absolutely join him in congratulating Barry Hyde from his constituency and all the work that he does. And as we hear time and again in these sessions, the crucial role that our volunteers, our community volunteers, play in making our constituencies great places to live and work.
Douglas McAllister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Will the Minister join with me in congratulating my Western Bartonshire constituent, Audrey Mutungai Darko, the founder of the #1 befriending agency? It was announced in the New Year's Honours List that she's to receive the British Empire Medal for services to tackling loneliness and isolation in older people in Scotland? And can the Leader of the House arrange for an urgent debate to discuss how this government can do more to help vulnerable older people and tackle loneliness and social isolation?
Well, I'll absolutely join him in congratulating Audrey on her great achievement, and yet again hearing of this amazing work that our constituents do day in, day out to support others and make sure that others have access to the care and support that they need. And I will certainly look into a debate on that issue.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. A number of my constituents in Bolton West have grave concerns about homes being repurposed into houses in multiple occupations, so-called HMOs, without any requirement for planning permission. Currently, planning permission is not needed for homes in Bolton with 6 bedrooms or less. Yet I know of 3 houses in Horwich which are being redeveloped into 6-bedroom homes without any oversight and with concerns being raised around parking and antisocial behaviour. Can the Leader therefore make government time for a debate on this important issue to ensure there is a level playing field across the country on planning requirements for HMOs?
Leader.
Well, absolutely. I think we can all recognise the real issues that occur when unregulated HMOs take hold in communities and the challenges that bring to community cohesion and poor housing standards. I've just announced today that the Renters' Rights Bill is back here next week, and that's a great opportunity for him to raise these issues.
Final question, and Happy New Year, Joe Morris.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and Happy New Year to you. The Leader of the House will know that I've been frequently contacted by constituents from some of the most rural parts of my constituency urging the government to swiftly move on with the manifesto commitment to extend the ban on trail hunting that is a blight on many rural communities and encourages antisocial behaviour. So can I echo that in the strongest possible terms and urge the government to move on with this landmark bit of legislation?
Leader of the House.
Well, Happy New Year to him too, and thank him for raising these issues. He will be aware that we have got the most ambitious plans in a generation to improve animal welfare, and I've absolutely heard his call today to look at this issue when parliamentary time allows.
That's the end of business questions.